Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are moving on to the next episode in my category breakdown series, and in today's video we are taking a look at the best original score category. And if you're new to the series, basically all this is just in every single one of these videos we're going to take a look at all of the nominees from that category. We're going to talk about some facts about the nominations, just going to talk a little bit about the nominations themselves in general, and then at the end I'm going to give you my personal ranking of them and my prediction for how likely it is that I think they win the Academy Award. And I'm going to try to, if I can remember, to put in the description of this video a link to a Spotify playlist that has all of the scores in it. It's been a lot of fun, for me, I enjoy listening to the score as I'm watching a movie, but it's a lot more fun, I think, almost to just kind of separate the score from the movie, in a sense, and just listen to it that way, and you're able to kind of get more of an appreciation, I think, for the score, so I'm going to put that in the description as well. And without further ado, let's take a look at the first nominee, which is The Brutalist. Composed by Daniel Blumberg. This is Daniel Blumberg's first Oscar nomination. His only other feature film credit was scoring The World to Come in 2020. The Brutalist has been nominated for Best Score at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice, and the Golden Globes. Now, obviously, in order to be nominated in this category, you have to have a good score. That's obviously the bare minimum. But I do think there are, every now and then, there's a couple films like Oppenheimer last year and The Brutalist this year that also get an extra boost, because not only is their score good, but because their films are over 3 hours long, there's a lot of score. There's a whole lot to it. So I'm pretty sure on the Spotify playlist that I've been listening to, I think The Brutalist has the longest score, which, if you've seen the film, isn't a shocker, because not only is it, a 3 hour and 45-minute movie with a 10-minute or 15-minute intermission in the middle, but there's also some score kind of playing a little bit in the intermission, so you're getting extra score tacked on, and then you're just getting there are some scenes a lot of kind of quiet or reserved. It's not quite like Oppenheimer where almost like every second had the score blaring, but this is a lot of score. There is way more than I was thinking. There's a lot more kind of just like music than I was kind of anticipating when I went into The Brutalist. And the thing for me is the score for The Brutalist, I guess this is kind of spoiling it a little bit already, that this is currently, I think, the front runner. And I think for it, there is one thing that I think helps you a lot with score is if you kind of have an iconic moment of your film that is aided by the score. So, I mean, I keep referencing to Oppenheimer last year, but if you think back to Oppenheimer, the moment of kind of like in the middle of the film where they're learning about the Russian spy, and that score is just like so, just keeping you like on the edge of your seat as Robert Downey Jr. is, acting his ass off in that particular scene. But you know the scene. It's like that scene was so great for so many reasons, but like that score made that scene iconic. And I think that The Brutalist has a very iconic moment when Laszlo first kind of is on the ferry and he looks up and sees the Statue of Liberty upside down, and that iconic riff of the score is, I mean, if you've heard the trailer, it's like the part of the score that plays during the trailer, and it's beautiful. It's this great piece, and it's within like the first 2 minutes of the movie, so it's like instantly it has that moment. You hear that score, and I think a lot of people are getting, maybe Oscar voters watch the first 2 minutes of the movie and just think, wow, like, yeah, that is awesome. That is a great use of score. Really sets this scene, really sets the mood. And I'm not saying this because the rest of the score is bad or anything, because it's not, but it just, that definitely is the kind of the most iconic moment of the score. And there are some nice pieces, but I do think that, other than kind of that one riff, and then the some other moments toward the end. Also, the score is great, kind of in the toward the end and kind of like in the epilogue. There's a lot of great moments with the score, but I think it's just kind of funny to me that like the best part of the score is like in the first 2 minutes of the movie, and then it's just kind of, it's a nice score throughout. And I will also say that another part of the score that I really love is the score that as it's leading into the intermission. I think that piece of music is done really well, where it kind of leads you right into the intermission and it kind of cuts. I think that's a nice touch as well for the score. So this is obviously, it is a great score, don't get me wrong, and it's probably the front runner for a reason. It maybe isn't necessarily the one that just connected with me the most. So for my personal ranking, I'm actually putting The Brutalist in fourth, but for my prediction, I'm putting it in first. The next nominee is Conclave, composed by Volker Bertelmann. This is Volker Bertelmann's third Oscar nomination. He won in 2023 for All Quiet on the Western Front. He was also nominated in 2017 for Lion. Conclave has been nominated for Best Score at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice, and the Golden Globes. And in the last video I posted on my channel, I kind of mentioned that Conclave is one of my favorite of the Best Picture films. It's one of my favorite just Oscar-nominated films in general this year. So I do think that maybe I have a little bit of a bias towards some aspects of Conclave. And in that video, it was the production design video. I kind of talked about how that's one of the best aspects of the film is how good the production design works. For me, the absolute best, and this isn't even like I'm better than like the acting, better than the directing, better than the screenplay, which all of those are great as well. For me, it's the score of Conclave is so good. This was the experience I had when I first walked into Conclave. The first time I saw this, I knew what the film was. I knew it was Edward Berger's next film. I didn't know what the plot was. I didn't know anything other than really just a movie. I guess I kind of knew it was about popes. I didn't necessarily know it was about like electing a new pope or anything, and I didn't know it was going to be this drama with all of this kind of gossiping and I'm almost like a high school type of drama. I didn't realize that that was what the film was going to be. And so walking in, and it's pretty early, the first scene of where the current pope dies. Even in that scene, the score is kind of a little unnerving, and I was watching it being like, "Oh, this doesn't quite feel like this is the right score for this moment." But it's just because I didn't realize what the rest of the film was going to be. I didn't realize it was going to be this, tense and suspenseful at times, and just kind of this movie that had me more on the edge of my seat than I was expecting. And a large part of that really is due to this score. It's such a brilliant and like at times haunting and like just very memorable score that really, of all of the scores, it's the one that like has stuck with me the most. And it's kind of interesting because it's seems like that's kind of a staple here of Volker Bertelmann, because if you remember his last score, All Quiet on the Western Front, a lot of people were really mad at the time because it beat Babylon that year, and a lot of people really, I mean, this because the score to Babylon is great because it's this up tempo and fast paced and a lot of jazz horns and a lot of stuff going on in the Babylon score, and then all of a sudden you get this All Quiet on the Western Front score that's just like like haunting and memorable. And it just, especially for All Quiet, because it has the iconic kind of like boom 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 like riff that's going on. This is kind of the same, where it's not quite that iconic, I would say, but it does have just kind of the repetitive and just the kind of the earworms, right? It's just kind of that the bit of the score. It's also kind of a little more fast paced. It's, I mean, not Babylon fast paced, but it is more fast paced, and it is just up tempo and really kind of just get you a little anxious and get you a little nervous. And for me, for this film, not knowing what it was, hearing that score for the first time, I was thinking, this is incredible. And then as the film kept going, I thought, not only is this incredible, but it fits this film so perfectly. So for my personal ranking, I'm putting Conclave in first, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in second. The next nominee is Emilia Perez, composed by Clement Ducal and Camille. This is the third Oscar nomination for both Clement Ducal and Camille. They were both nominated 2 times in the Best Original Song category this year for El Mal and Mi Camino from Emilia Perez. Emilia Perez has been nominated for Best Score at the BAFTAs and the Golden Globes. And Emilia Perez is one of 2 in this category. It's actually the next one as well that we're going to talk about, that kind of on the surface seems a little weird as like a score nomination, because it's a musical. And so we're not awarding the songs, as the score. And so I think initially it kind of seems a little weird, but then you have to remember that there is score in between the songs. And in Emilia Perez, it's some of it is good, and then a lot of it is just kind of pretty forgettable for me. I will say that there is one piece of the score that I really like. It's a really good, maybe 10-15 seconds, and it's right at the end of the Selena Gomez talking on the phone scene. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the movie, you still might know what I'm talking about, because that clip just, it's not as big as the La Vaginoplasty song, but it's the other like really big moment of Selena Gomez talking to someone on the phone in Spanish. But it's that tune that plays right after that, as it's kind of this weird kind of soap opera moment. If she delivers this line, this score plays, and it's this beautiful part of the score, and then it kind of like a hard cut to black, and it's this really kind of weirdly edited and kind of weird moment that I think almost is saved a little bit because of the score that is playing in that moment, because I do like that little piece of the score, that little piece of music. There are other things with the score here that are done that are good as well. There is and toward the end of the film, there's a part where Selena or Zoe Saldana and a bunch of other people, they're kind of getting ready to go out and attack or defend someone or to get someone, and there's a point where they're kind of making the beat to the song, like with the guns. They're like loading and taking out the bullets and banging them on the table and doing everything, and like that's a kind of cool little piece of the score. But I mean, other than those kind of moments, a lot of this isn't super memorable. And in the playlist that I'm going to put in the description, you can go and you can click on it, and when you click on the Emilia Perez score, there are a couple pieces of music here and there, but their actual score on like the Spotify website, it's still mostly just the songs. The next musical we're going to talk about doesn't put the songs because there is so much extra just score in addition to the musical numbers that they actually have that playlist. Emilia Perez, there just isn't, for me. I think it's the least amount of score out of everything in this category, and there's just, outside of one or two moments, not a whole ton that's super memorable for me. So for my personal ranking, I'm putting Emilia Perez in 5th, and then for my prediction, I'm also putting it in 5th. The next nominee is Wicked, composed by John Powell and Stephen Schwartz. This is John Powell's second Oscar nomination. He was nominated in 2011 for How to Train Your Dragon. This is Stephen Schwartz's ninth Oscar nomination. He won for Best Original Song in 1999 for When You Believe from The Prince of Egypt, and in 1996 for Colors of the Wind from Pocahontas. He also won for Best Original Score in 1996 for Pocahontas. He was nominated for Best Original Score in 1999 for The Prince of Egypt, and in 1997 for The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He also was nominated for 3 different songs from Enchanted in 2008: Happy Working Song, So Close, and That's How You Know. And so Wicked is the other musical that's in here. And this is another one that I think kind of caught a lot of people off guard for multiple reasons. One, being the musical, right? But two, I think also because, I guess going back to point one, if you think of it as a musical, maybe you're not really thinking of the score, right? Because you're just kind of thinking of the musical numbers. You don't know if there's a lot of score that qualifies for it in addition to those. But then if you do kind of listen and you realize how much score is still in Wicked on top of the musical numbers, you still maybe didn't know that it was original, like that the whole category is Best Original Score. From, again, I haven't seen, I'll say this in pretty much every category that Wicked's in, I haven't seen the play, so I can't really compare it to that, and I don't know if like they have any sort of kind of orchestra or any instrumental, just kind of music playing behind the audio, like the dialogue that's going on in the play. But from what I've heard, is this score, a lot of it is brand new. It's original music. It's stuff that, maybe there's a couple parts I think of the score that, for example, there's a couple different songs like Defying Gravity, obviously, is the biggest one. I think Popular as well. There's a couple of the songs where they have moments of dialogue that kind of breaking up the song. Or I think for Popular's case, it's just kind of the instrumental or the tune of Popular. It kind of plays a little bit before the song. I think it plays maybe in some scenes earlier. So there's kind of some things like that. But then there's just also a lot of just kind of as songs are ending or before they get into songs, there's kind of an additional piece of new material that's kind of written that leads you into the new song or kind of leads you out of the song. And then there's just also just a lot of scenes of, where there isn't necessarily a musical number and something's happening and there's just your normal dialogue, and then that's where you're kind of getting this beautiful score that's kind of kicking in the background. And so I think this is one of those that, of all of the nominees, I guess it's kind of in the same category as Emilia Perez, where you don't necessarily recognize the score as much because what you leave when you leave, what you're thinking about is the songs, right? Like that's what stood out to you. So I think they're kind of, the score in these films is maybe a little bit overlooked. So that's also why I recommend clicking on like the Spotify playlist in the description and actually going and listening to the score, because I was kind of shocked when I watched Wicked. I remember kind of hearing some of the score. I didn't necessarily fall in love with it, but I thought it was okay. And then when I was listening to it later, just kind of, driving in my car listening to the score, it's a lot better than I kind of remember it being in the film. It's a nice, beautiful score, and it's one that, there is a kind of a big snub in this category that was Challengers. I think I would have preferred Challengers to get in here over maybe, Wicked or Emilia Perez, but when I re-listened to this, I was kind of blown away by just how beautiful this score really was. So for my personal ranking, I'm putting this in 3rd, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in 4th. And the last nominee is The Wild Robot. Composed by Chris Bowers, this is Chris Bowers' third Oscar nomination. His other two nominations both came in the documentary short category. He won last year for The Last Repair Shop and was nominated in 2021 for A Concerto as a Conversation. The Wild Robot was nominated at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice, and the Golden Globes. And this is one that when I made my Oscar nomination predictions, if you remember, I predicted a snub for The Wild Robot. And the entire time I knew it had nothing to do with how good the score was or wasn't. Like, it had nothing to do with that. I was just kind of trying to make a bold prediction based off of maybe animation bias in this category, knowing that even like having seen it the first time, I remember thinking like, yeah, it was a good score, but I didn't like remember how good it was. So when I watched this a second time a couple weeks ago, I was just absolutely blown away by how amazing this score is. It is, I think a lot of animated films really do kind of have great scores, and I think there is unfortunately a little bit of an animation bias, I think, in this category. But this is a score that was just so beautiful. It's part of what makes me, I think, so emotional when I watch this movie, because on the surface it's not necessarily the most emotional, and it's not like the saddest story or the most beautiful, but it's just there's parts of it that are just, this score is so upbeat, it's so lively, it's so heartwarming. It's the type of score that just kind of feels like a big hug. And amongst all of the other scores that are in this category, there are a couple. Wicked in particular kind of has some nicer sounding, beautiful music, but a lot of it is a little bit more intense, and it's kind of more like the Conclave score. As much as I love it, it's very just kind of gripping, and it's a little bit more unnerving than it is kind of this comforting score. And so that's where I think The Wild Robot comes in and does an excellent job of just kind of being a little bit different than the other scores in the category. It's this nice, peaceful, beautiful score that really is just, I mean, I can't talk about just like how beautiful it is. It's the last score that I listened to when I've been listening to these scores as I've been driving to and from work, and this was what I was listening to on my car ride home today, was just listening to this and just thinking like, this is this is like a score that I could just in years from now just remember like, oh yeah, I loved the Wild Robot score so much, let me just throw that on. Like, that's the type of score that this is. So I'm really glad that it was able to still get in there, get that nomination. And there's just a couple, this is one of those scores that has those iconic moments, like right at the end of the film is where the score kind of comes in a little bit, and that's like a beautiful, just like it leads you right into the credits. That piece of music is probably my favorite of the score, but there's just so many pieces here that are just absolutely beautiful. And so for my personal ranking, I'm putting The Wild Robot in second, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in third. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought of these nominations, and if there was any films like challengers that you thought got snubbed this year in the score category. And also just let me know down below what categories you're most excited to see next coming up. We're in the full swing of it, so we're in the next couple weeks. Hopefully every single day I'll be uploading a new video, and it's going to be a lot of these category breakdowns, so let me know what category you're looking forward to next. And if you'd like to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those videos, I would greatly appreciate it, and have a great day.